Why are there so many words for this? And what do you call it, other than that grassy thing over there?
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to the suburbs. Specifically, how they differ when you go for a walk around them. For having lived in the suburbs of both countries, I'm well attuned to those differences, and so I'm going to talk about them today. Now, before we do that, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, do that now. In the meantime, let's go for a walk. Let's go. You gonna keep going? You just love the camera, don't you? You're such a ham. You're such a ham. Look at you. And we're going to start this list by talking about something you may or may not have heard of called verges. Verges are that little strip of grass on the other side of the pavement from the front yard. While these do exist in Britain, it's far more common to see a front yard / garden, a sidewalk / pavement, and then the road with the cars going in the other direction. In America, it feels like 80% of the time you are on the verge of a verge. There are a lot of verges here, and it's nice having them. I just wish that when I bought my house, somebody would have told me that I would be responsible for mowing them, because while it sounds like small work, it's made harder by the fact that there's always a tree in the way. And while we're on the subject of trees, I've talked before about how there are different types of trees here, but that's not what I want to talk about. Nor the notion that your average American suburb has more of them, because I'm not entirely sure that it does. In fact, I want to talk about Grandliness. What's Grandliness, Lawrence? Grandliness is a word that I made up to describe the degree to which something is green. Sort of like what cleanliness does for the word clean. I want to get a word into the dictionary. And I can't really describe it, but I think there's something different about the grandliness of American trees compared to those in the United Kingdom. I'm not a scientist, but I think there's a vibrancy to the leaves of trees in the United States that you just don't see in Britain. And I do wonder if some of that is due to photosynthesis, right? That's what we learned about in school. There's typically less cloud cover here in the United States compared to Britain. And I think that allows the grandliness of not just the trees, but the grass to take shape. I won't do that with a camera ever again.
Perhaps the most enduring image of a stereotypical American house is not the house itself, but the white picket fence that surrounds it.
But while America undoubtedly has more of these than Britain, a lot of American suburban homes are perhaps more notable for having no partition whatsoever.
In other words, there's often very little protecting your front yard from wandering humans or even children. Thankfully, despite the open invitation, people typically stick to the sidewalk, unless their name contains the words gym and chainsaw.
In Britain, an open-face front yard is considerably less common, with most houses opting not for a fence but a low-lying wall or hedge.
In fact, it's often along these walls that you'll find our next entry.
In the past, I've talked about the general difference between British and American street names. For example, in Britain, virtually every town and city has a street named after Queen Victoria, whereas in the US, there's a good chance that your street name will contain either a president, a number, or a type of tree.
But there's also a major difference in how the street names are displayed.
In Britain, it's not uncommon for the name to be displayed on a 2-foot placard. These are normally mounted either onto 2 low-level poles or a wall.
In the US, things are a little different. The street names are housed on smaller, greener placards that sit on a much taller pole. And given the grid-like nature of many American neighborhoods, these poles usually contain not 1 but 2 street names, one facing east or west, the other north or south.
This is why you'll often hear American film characters say something like, "Hey, Johnny, meet me at 21st and Washington on the double."
In Britain, we don't really do that. It's more like, meet me at the pub at 9 a.m. Bring your darts. And then there's the terminology we use to describe the stuff in our respective suburban lands. You've got yard instead of garden, sidewalk instead of pavement, a downspout instead of a drain pipe, although Americans do also say drain pipe, median instead of central reservation. And finally, there's a word difference for something that I spoke about earlier, verges.
At least verges are what we call them in England.
In America, Verges must be so prevalent that no single American can agree on what to call them.
In Pennsylvania and parts of the Midwest, they apparently call it a berm. In the upper Midwest, it's a boulevard or a boulevard strip. New Englanders might go with a common.
In parts of Ohio, it's called a curb strip, while in other parts of Ohio, it's called a devil strip.
People in Ann Arbor, Michigan have been known to call it an extension lawn, which makes sense because it's an extension of your lawn. New Jersey seems to like the term grass bay, while others on the East Coast go with grass plot.
Except for Long Islanders who think it's an island strip.
In the Pacific Northwest, the word median suffices, while Northern Californians think it's a mow strip. Down in the Gulf states, it's often known as neutral ground, which also makes sense because while a verge might be an extension of my lawn, other people's dogs do routinely shit on it.
What do you call this, Arthur? You probably just call it toilet, don't you? Yes.
Some states know it as a parking strip, a park row, or a park row strip.
In Wisconsin and Illinois, it occasionally goes by a right-of-way.
Alternatively, some Americans opt for sidewalk lawn, sidewalk plot, sidewalk strip, and in central Indiana, I once heard it called a sidewalk taint. Like, what? In southern Florida, some might even call it a swale, even though that sounds more like a species of fish. Some Missourians call it a terrace, which coincidentally is what the British call row houses, while some Americans will call it a tree box, a tree belt, or a tree lawn.
Why are there so many words for this? And what do you call it, other than that grassy thing over there? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever lived in a suburb and the general Grandliness of your trees. I'm Lawrence Brown. You can follow me on Twitter and or Threads, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that I don't have to. And while we're on the subject, here's a video of some of the culture shocks that I experienced after moving into my first American suburb, and you're going to watch that video next. Thank you to my ponderers who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a ponderer and gain access to my secret video series, Diary of a YouTube Sensation, what's going on? And watch my secret live stream, you can do that today at patreon.com/lostinthepond or by clicking the join button below. Until the next video, goodbye.